Coogs house. It's Houston. It's Colorado. It's Coach Prime. It's Willie Fritz. It's week 3 and game 1 of the Big 12. Week 3 means one thing. 3 things Houston's got to do to win this ball game.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougars, today, a podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. Whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Appreciate you making us your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Cougars. If you want to join the conversation, but you don't know what to say, tell us about your Cougar Red Friday and your thoughts on Friday Night Lights as Houston plays Colorado tonight on Friday to open up Big 12 play. Official day show is brought to you by Mazda, which fun. I actually drive a Mazda. I can speak to that pretty firsthand. We got more on that in a moment. But I want to talk about how Houston's going to win this game, the 3 things they've got to do, the 3 keys to the game, 3 key matchups Houston needs to make sure that they win as well in the second segment. And last but not least, as it's week 3, we're going to continue with the rule of 3 here and 3 things that are at stake for the Houston Cougars. Now, first, I mentioned there are 3 things Houston's got to do to win this ball game. It has been reported, refuted, but seems likely that quarterback Ryan Staub is going to be the starter for Colorado in this game. Most people I talked to this week, and I talked like 4 or 5 different outlets with the people behind the scenes and on camera about things this week with Colorado. They all seem to think that this is not a consistently rotating quarterbacks kind of situation. Feels like if it's Staub's job, it's Staub's job. And so Kaidon Salter may get some running reps or some wildcatty type packages because he can boogie a little bit, right? But Staub being the guy means Houston's got to get after Ryan Staub. That's the first key to victory here because he's not the mobile athlete that Kaidon Salter is. He played some last week against Delaware and looked good. He earned the job, right? Practiced probably with the ones all week this week. I think it's safe to assume. He didn't get a snap in week 1, which meant he went through all of fall camp, all summer, all spring as the not starter at Colorado. And I think that is, frankly, something to take advantage of. Now, he's been there in the system for a while, but he was also not the starter then either. He was playing behind Deion Sanders. And while he puts the ball in the air better than Salter does, he's certainly not Deion Sanders at it, right? Interesting in watching them play. They do a lot of what we called back when I coached football. I coach basketball now still, but back when I coached football, they did a lot of what we called spit out screens, right? So like your zone read, and you spit it out to the flat. Your zone read, you spit out the receiver, horizontal, side to side, east, west. You hear all kinds of different names for it. Where the ball just shoots it out to the wide receiver, and you get a little like 2-on-2 or a 2-on-1 kind of situation out on the perimeter. These are effectively run plays, and I think Houston's going to have DBs that want to jump it, and frankly, jumping one could take one to the house, especially if you get a tip like Trajan McCutcheon did in the Rice game, right? However, I do think it's just pointing out like Staub is the kind of guy that if you jump those once or twice, he may beat you with a double move over the top. He has more of that kind of an arm than anyone else on their roster. And this is effectively a wide run play. And we'll get to why that comes into play in a second. But the real way I think Houston stops that is by pressing up on it and getting after Salter or getting after Staub himself because he is not the athlete that Salter is. So getting after Ryan Staub in the pocket, making him feel uncomfortable in his first start will be important. Again, if it's Kaidon Salter, I guess the opposite would be the case, is to keep him contained in the pocket, right? He's such an electric athlete, but I think it's going to be Staub, and I think that's the way to go there. The other thing I think Houston's got to do is run the ball. Consistently get positive yards. If it's going to be split zone, which it looks like it is through 2 weeks with Slade Nagel, which would make sense because that's what he did at Tulane. That feels like his bread and butter, his MO. If that's the play you hang your hat on, we talked about that before in the show, then I think that's what you got to do over and over and over again. Look, the game got away from Delaware, but their running back had 4.3 yards per carry in that game. And game flow dictated some stuff. They probably didn't need to couldn't run it late and they got down so much, right, or whatever. But they were pretty effective in that. Georgia Tech obviously runs a very different offense with Haynes King, and they run the ball a lot. But spending all summer, all camp, knowing that, they were still able to get 320 yards at 6.8 yards per carry, while Colorado knew it was coming, right? And yes, Georgia Tech is good. They took Georgia to the brink last year, yada yada yada, all that kind of stuff. But Colorado's defense prepared for the run, knowing the run was coming, and still struggled to stop it with Georgia Tech. Houston's been extremely effective running the football. Dean Connors being Dean Connors doing Dean Connors things. You do not have Jermaine Fat Burnett, it looks like, in this one, but Stacey Sneed has been throwing his weight around there in there as well. I also think that this is kind of the time you hopefully see some designed kind of Wegman runs, some RPOs, and those kinds of things to kind of get him moving, use that athleticism he has to get out of the pocket and hurt a defense that way. Frankly, I look at the defensive side of the ball as being Colorado's actual weakness, even if they didn't know who their quarterback was going to be coming into the season. And on that injury report, while Dalton Merriman being downgraded to questionable does hurt my heart a little bit. Starting right tackle for the first 2 games, Colorado's Jaheim Oates is on their out list. Samuel Okunlola is there also on their out list. Those are 2 guys that played a lot of ball for them. And Jaheim Oates is good, right? And so those are front 7 kind of guys, defensive line guys that are going to be missing in this one. Now, I think Jade Unfair Sports tell me that they're probably not only run type guys, and that might hurt their pass rush more. But I feel like that's going to open up more space to run the ball in there in between those gaps, get after with Dean Connors. I think that that's a place where Houston can make some money. The other thing about running the ball against Georgia Tech, or against Colorado, as Georgia Tech saw, is you keep that offense of theirs off of the field. That's the strength of theirs. You keep that off the field, you keep the ball in your hands, time possession wins the football game. This is not going to be a game. It would be extremely surprising to me if this was the kind of game that you won by multiple touchdowns or something like that. That's just not the MO of this program at Houston right now. Maybe the Keyshawn Henderson years will get there, right? But that's just not where I think we are right now. And I think that's the kind of reason to keep the ball on the ground and keep after it. And I think you can use Connor in that. Connor will be effective in that. But Dean Connors obviously is going to be the head honcho and all that. Last but not least, throwing it, running it, whatever. Houston's got to take care of the football. Hold on to the ball, keep a clean sheet, no fumbles, no picks. They've been able to do a pretty good job of that through a couple weeks against a lesser competition. Obviously, doing the same thing against Colorado is going to be a little more challenging. However, big turnovers against Delaware were kind of the thing that turned that game on its head. It was competitive through a lot of the first half in terms of both teams trading body blows, and then pick here, fumble there, big play from Delaware, a gigantic run on their option kind of stuff they're doing, but then they fumbled it at the end of the run. I mean, big kind of things taken away, big turnovers happened for Colorado in that one to beat Delaware. I would also look at in that Georgia Tech game, Colorado kept it close, and that's been like a quiet, moral victory of sorts for Colorado, right? But they kept it close because Georgia Tech had 3 turnovers, right? And so if Houston can keep a clean sheet, that's going to limit those Colorado possessions, but also is frankly something that Colorado's defense, to their credit, is taking the ball away. I should point out that that's a 2-sided coin, and I probably shouldn't just omit the other side, right? It's like, they practice too, right? It's not like I'm taking that away, trying to take that away from them necessarily. I do think, though, that if Houston can keep a clean sheet in this one, it feels like a victory in and of itself, or feels like it's pretty. Run the ball well and keep a clean sheet means you probably win this one, just because Colorado kind of needs those extra possessions. Colorado kind of needs those short fields. Colorado kind of needs, honestly, more possessions and time on the clock when you're throwing it, right? So if you do all those things, I think Houston's got a really good shot in this one. I think those are 3 keys to victory: getting after Ryan Staub, running the ball effectively, holding onto the ball when you're on offense, right? That's going to be important. Now, another thing that's important is there are legitimately NFL players all over the field in this one. I know that that might be people might be telling me I'm being facetious or whatever, but I think both teams have NFL talent, a couple handful of positions that weirdly might match up, and I want to see how those matchups go. So I want to talk about that in just a second, about why those matchups are so important. Before we get too far, today's show is brought to you by buddies over at Mazda, which is again fun. I really do drive a Mazda, and I have to tell you, doing a research on car buying, things like that, finding Mazda has won more IIHS 2025 safety awards than anyone else out there as of late August. That was really, really important for family of a toddler trying to take care of kids, but also drives really well. You don't feel like you're driving something like a safety built vehicle. You feel like you're driving a fast, fluid crossover SUV out there. Mazda's made to move, and we're moving with the Houston Cougar football program forward. So move forward, move and be moved with Mazda. Locked on Coogs, Parker Ainsworth here, talking about the 3 matchups to keep an eye on in this one. And honestly, if Houston wins this first matchup, I think they might win the game in and of itself. Sincere Brown is a tremendous wide receiver at Colorado. 6'5", long strider, wins jump balls, eats up turf as he's running. Started off at South Florida, spent a year at Campbell, and is now wrapping up his college career with Coach Prime out at Colorado. He's got a lot of film where it's just like, hey, Sincere Brown's down there somewhere, throw it up there, right? And he's really good. I don't mean this in a way it takes away from it. If Latrell McCutcheon can win that matchup, and I think he can, that might ice the game right there. Right now, I do think that that's the kind of receiver that Latrell McCutcheon does well with. He's big, tall, strong, straight line fast. Sometimes the smaller, twitchier guys are a little more challenging. And I think Latrell McCutcheon will do well with this. I could also see, though, because McCutcheon plays a lot of boundary side, you could see Zelmar Vader maybe tracking Sincere Brown side to side. Zelmar Vader is 6'3" and change, a long athlete, so that height difference is pretty minimal there. You also saw Vader. I mean, he led all Power 4 defensive backs in coverage grades after week 1. Obviously, that changes against Rice. They don't have many coverage opportunities against Rice, but I think that is a matchup that Houston should look to win. So I think it'll be Latrell McCutcheon. I could also say being Zelmar Vader. Truthfully, if it's Mark Stampley, whoever it is, I think that Houston's got to be physical with him at the line of attack, at the line of scrimmage, trust your pass rush, and ultimately compete in jump balls. Now, Sincere Brown's going to win some plays. The guy is really good. He's probably an NFL player, even with the background being some smaller institutions before Colorado. They just don't make guys that big to play receiver, right? Like that played really well. And so he's going to get a look. And he does win jump balls. I think the deal is to continue to compete with him, win more times than you lose, and win more times with those reps than you lose. And then also, like, really, really in the end zone and stuff like that, like, get physical. He's going to be a physical receiver. Get physical. Similarly, the inverse of this to me is Houston Tanner Kogel versus, I think it'll be Carter Stoudemire. Now, Stoudemire is only 5'11", but a strong safety type guy with good coverage skills. And I think he'll be able to keep up with Kogel that way. Kogel's got to win this matchup, right? Carter Stoudemire has played the free safety spot in the first game, but he's also been in the box a lot. And then that trajectory kind of got closer to even, where he has more even 50-50 between the two spots and the box and free safety in week 2. I wonder if he could be even more in the box in week 3. And, after a loss to Georgia Tech, if they're maybe thinking, hey, that's, close line scrimmage, make less mistakes, right? Those kind of things tend to happen with safeties as they move close to the line scrimmage. Thus far, Carter Stoudemire has only given up 2 catches in man coverage. Now, they played Delaware and they played Georgia Tech. And as good as Georgia Tech is, they're not known for throwing it, right? But if Tanner wins this matchup, it's going to change the rest of the coverage stuff that Colorado wants to do. They do a lot of man coverages, man single high kind of stuff, etc. And if Tanner Kogel is winning his matchup, they've got to shift at least part of their field of play out of man into some more brackety kind of stuff at least, if not maybe some cloud stuff to keep some help over the top and force him into it. Like him being able to bend the secondary as a tight end with receiver type hands and route running, if he can do that against Stoudemire, but whoever the safety is or whoever on top of him, really, I do think that Houston will frankly have a lot of offensive success, because then you're forcing Colorado to do a lot of stuff that they may have practiced for this week, but it's not like their bread and butter, not their MO, and frankly, not what they recruit to. They recruit to a man-to-man defense, right? And I think that is important when you're looking at such a crazy man-to-man matchup. Tanico Shell, can he win that matchup and force them to do something different outside of themselves? I'm looking forward to that one, because I think Tanner's got a really good chance there. And frankly, we know if you watch any Houston Cougar football last two games, you know kind of Wegman's going to get him the ball, right? So that's the way that goes. Now, I mentioned man-to-man defense, and that gets me to my third and final matchup. Connor Wegman, quarterback, Houston Cougars quarterback, versus DJ McKinney, a defensive back from Colorado. Now, DJ McKinney is a big, strong, long, rangy corner. He also, for what it's worth, is I'd call him the number one man guy. I guess I got different results from different people when I was kind of asking him questions about this Colorado team. But I think of him as the number one defensive back, or certainly the number one corner. And I could see him going to the field side a lot. I could also see him matching with Boogie Johnson a lot. Stephon Boogie Johnson has the one catch so far, but we know that what he's capable of after his previous years. The time on task is important, and understand that the impact Stephon Boogie Johnson brings. Wegman, and I'm still high on him. I think people are way too quick to get out. Wegman does not like throwing into tight man coverage. Not many quarterbacks do, to be fair. It's not an uncommon quarterback trait. But a guy that's been hurt as much as he has not had a lot of experience doing it. And we tried to play hurt with it last year, and it didn't go very well. Playing as this man-to-man coverage is going to be interesting. And if Wegman can kind of throw his guys open, find those windows against DJ McKinney, their top corner, then the trickle-down effect of that is going to be pretty impactful as well. Ultimately, I think Houston's goal is going to be run the ball more than pass it, obviously, anyway. So maybe that's all going to be for naught, right? I didn't point out that I think like getting Dean Connors in against that linebacking core is going to be important. I didn't mention that, someone in the interior like Matt Wyckoff and down blocking the nose tackle might be important. And they probably all will be individually important, right? But I think that these one-on-one matchups really, again, who's covering Kogel, who's covering Sincere Brown, those are going to be important. And then I think that Wegman being able to beat some one-on-one matchups with his arm is going to be important for Houston too. And I know my tone might not sound optimistic. I usually am in a lot more optimistic spot by Friday. I'm getting a little nervous about this one. It's Big 12 game day, and Houston's 2-0. I'm going to go 3-0 for the first time in a long time. But also, I do think I think part of the reason I'm nervous is because I actually think it's possible, right? Like, look, I thought there was a path to victory against Oklahoma last year. I was happy that we were putting it on them, on like embarrassing them on national TV, kind of regardless of result, right? This year's different. This year's priorities are different. And I think that ultimately that makes it maybe a little more nerve-wracking, and these one-on-one matchups might be a little bit more important, right? In the way that unfolds. Now, I think McKinney and Wegman's gonna be interesting. You could put McKinney and Kogel, I guess, and really flip-flop my stuff around or whatever as I'm thinking about it. But I think he's too skinny. And I think that's why you're going to go with the Stoudemire guy. Stoudemire is stout, no pun intended. I think that's just a well-named guy. But anyway, I want to get into what the stakes of this game are, why I have that nervous energy about it, why the line keeps moving, and all of that in the final segment before we get to the game. Before we get too far, today's show is brought to you by our buddies over at Drip Drop. Now, it is going to be hot Friday night. in the mid 90s, Houston humidity. It was kind of a cold start to September, and we're back into the heat like it never left. I'm telling you right now, drip drop, that's the way to go with your hydration. Make sure that you get all the electrolytes that you need. Great flavors as well. Clearly, I drink them myself to stay hydrated in the Texas heat. If you use code LOCKEDONCollege, get 20% off your first order at dripdrop.com. That's code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, for 20% off your first order at dripdrop.com. Today's show is also brought to you by everybody over at DoorDash. And if you're looking to build a winning streak this week, you can too with DoorDash. Now, we can build streaks all year long. That's the goal. If you're going week by week here, we're looking at week 3, a 3-0 streak, and also a streak of dominance to being dependable player out of Dean Connors. Dean Connors is the most dependable player week in, week out for Houston. You know what you're getting every time. High effort guy, plugging up in the hole with the running back as a running back and bursting out when he can against like Rice. Those couple times he did. He is ultimately the most dependable guy on that Houston, as far as the statistics go, in the Houston Cougar locker room. DoorDash is dependable in the same kind of way. If you order every Sunday, you can build a DoorDash streak. Each and every Saturday you order DoorDash, you can build a DoorDash streak, saving ultimately up to $250 to $100 of that being DoorDash cash all college football season long. This offer goes all the way through November 18th. So get on DoorDash this Saturday after you're celebrating your Houston Cougar victory all night. Wake up on Saturday morning and order with DoorDash. Parker Andrews locked on Coogs here. And look, I got 3 different things I think are like at stake here for Houston. 3 different things I think Houston's got to focus on as they look at this game. First one is this is a big, big game for the proof of concept of Houston. We talked about it with multiple guests this week. I texted people about it throughout the weekend, or throughout the week since last weekend, really. Thus far, you've been vanilla if you're Houston. You've done what you're supposed to do. People might say that didn't look quite like they wanted to look, or it happened in the second half, not the first half. But overall, you won 2 blowouts against inferior teams. They were inferior teams. You knew it when you scheduled them. They were good, felt like preseason, felt like warm-ups kind of games. You finished last season in games against the BYUs of the world for a chunk of that game. You were certainly in a game against Baylor. I think the score doesn't quite give away how close that game was for a chunk of it, especially with the way the Houston defense was playing. Right, you beat Kansas State in a game that still has them spiraling, it appears. Those teams are all better than this Colorado team. And I think that makes this one feel different because, like you saw Houston finish last year with strong performances against those teams. We still feel like we're starting this year right now. The concept, though, would be the proof of concept comes in if you were doing what you did at the end of last year, you should be starting off this year doing at least that. You're supposed to be better than Colorado right now based on the way things have been tracking. They had Heisman Trophy winner last year. They had a guy that might start some NFL games this year. Who knows? Cleveland Browns are a dumpster fire, right? All that kind of stuff. However, their program has taken a little bit of a reset as they're navigating pretty significant roster changes, right? They went out and got a bunch of talent in the offseason transfer portal, and it looks like they might not start some of it because it wasn't an investment worth spending, right? Certainly wasn't the way they're going to use it. This is a program Houston is on the rise, moving forward, growing, right? This is a moment where that, it's not quite a supply-demand chart because it's not that dramatic, but like you're meeting at an apex here where the 2 lines cross. And Houston's line is going up, Colorado's going down, and not like big picture down. I mean, so they're falling off. They're winning 4 games, but they only won 4 games 2 years ago, right? And I think that last year in the Heisman Trophy campaign that Travis Hunter had and the exciting games they had throughout I think that ultimately that shadowed a lot. And if you're Houston and you're like, no, this is we're building this culture, we're building this resilience, we're going to win these tough games. this is a moment you can outgrid a team. This is a moment you can out-tough a team, and this is a moment you got to do it. If that's who you say you're going to do, you're going to be. And if you say you're going to do it, so when you got to do it, right? Now, I also think the second thing that I think is at stake here is, while both of these teams feel rebuildy right now, I told everyone, and if you're listening to it all week, you heard it. I think this is a game where both teams age well this year. This win is going to look really good in November for whoever gets it, because both of these teams will be better in November. But, and remember, they beat that Houston team. And they beat that Colorado team. That's what's going to be said. You don't want the first one. You want the second one. You want people to be, and they beat Colorado way back in mid-September. That's what you want to be said, because Colorado, once they get their wheels moving, get the quarterback integrated into the offense and kind of get things underway, they're going to win some games. And ultimately, on the strength of schedule metric, that's going to be important for whatever level of bowl game that plays into, whatever tiebreakers or AP rankings or whatever that plays into, right? You want to get the win now, because I am confident that Colorado's winning against Colorado will age long term. Frankly, if this were a Buffs show, I'd probably be telling you the same thing about Houston. Houston's going to win some games that they shouldn't. That's the really first thing, is he's going to win games that he doesn't have the talent on paper to a national consensus, right? That's what he does. And that's going to continue to build. And both of these teams are thinking the other's going to be better later. We got to have a chance to get them early. Let's get them now. And as far as Houston beating Colorado goes, look, you can look at the numbers. Beating Deion does well. It does well for your TV ratings. It does well for your recruit talks. It does well for putting you in conversations, right? This will age well in a lot of ways, and you got to go get it just because it will age well for Houston. It's going to be a big one later to talk about, look back on that you won. And that gets me to the third point here. Look, I don't mean to get out in front of my skis, and I don't mean to look past this individual week. But for a moment, if you think about the conference, the Big 12 itself looks even more wide open, I think, now than it maybe ever has. Iowa State, Utah, BYU have maybe separated themselves a little. Houston doesn't play any of them. TCU might be better than advertised. You do get them later, but Arizona State doesn't. They certainly look fallible. Won a bunch of close games last year, lost best player. Makes sense. Texas Tech is this gigantic unknown. They're kind of the metrics rating toughest team on your schedule. There's a shot Houston does something really cool this year. Went to a bunch of good games, important games, close games, and this Colorado game is the first chance to start that. What's at stake here is starting that special season in earnest, right? Yes, you beat Rice. You got the Bayou Bucket, and I liked winning that rivalry game a lot. Got the impression throughout the week that I might be one of the few that likes the rivalry game, but I like winning that rivalry a lot, right? You beat Stephen F. Austin, and while I know that people talk about how being the FCS school and this, that, and the other thing, honestly, you take wins where you can get them, and it was good to get out there and kind of get some preseason feeling tape on the video, right? Like getting a preseason game under your belt felt nice, right? And so, as you look at a year where the Big 12 feels really open, and like you really got a chance, because the teams that are competing to get to Arlington and win it are teams you wouldn't see till you got to Arlington, bluntly, right? And I think that's a good thing. I think that's a big thing. And I think that that's the kind of thing that makes this game big. Winning this game helps realize all those dreams later this season, right? All these things that can make this season crazy special. I heard this week one of Willie Fritz's press deals, obviously with day jobs, I'm hearing after the fact or whatever. He said the biggest thing that they focus on is Houston 2025. They break on Houston 2025. It's about focusing on the here and the now. It's not, with the transfer portal and coaching changes and all that, like, it's easy to worry about the future, worry about the past. Houston 2025, even as exciting as the class from 2026 is in recruiting, and as much fun as it was to beat Kansas State in 2024 and all that, or how ugly the passing offense was in 2024, whatever. That's behind you. 2026 is not yet here. In the now, there's something special potentially brewing. And this is a moment to go get that game. Regardless of outcome, we will be live at Locked on Cougs after the game. So make sure you hit subscribe and hit the bell so you know when we're going live. We'll be talking about the ins, the outs, the what have, the big plays, the shoelace breaks, all the different play calls that need to be talked about. And frankly, we might also just vibe out a little bit, talk about what happened in the Houston Cougar Colorado game. Now, this game is at 6:30 local time, September 12th, Friday night. It is on ESPN, so that's one positive, even though if they're playing on Friday night. Remember, tell us in the comments down below what you think about playing on a Friday night. Locked on Cougs, remember the Locked on Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Cougs.